Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Auto Trader's Roadmap podcast. I'm your host, Rachael Poole, and I'm really excited today to talk about something that is actually quite a hot topic of conversation in the product world, product marketing. And some of you might be listening to this today, you might have seen the subject line of this episode, and you might be working in a function at the minute where you're going to start to work with product marketing. You might be thinking what product marketing is, or, you want to get some advice on how to collaborate better as somebody who works in product with product marketing. And hopefully today we can answer some of the questions that you might have around it. Now, I'm not going to be chatting about this topic alone. I am joined by two of my colleagues here at Auto Trader. So welcome Amanda Dolan, who is our product marketing manager here at Auto Trader, and Scott McCluskey, who is a product lead. Welcome. Now, let's get the conversation going. Amanda, I am always curious to understand how people end up in their careers. And I want to start with you today. And I want to ask you, how did you end up in product marketing? What was it? What was your motivation of getting involved?
Motivation. So how did I end up in product marketing? Very good question. So I've always worked in automotive, but I am not a car person, which I'm sure Scott will allude to, unlike Scott, who loves cars. So I've done stints at brands, and then I've always kind of felt out of place in the automotive industry by asking why, because I'm not a car person, why does that feature matter? What benefit does it have to somebody? And then stumbled across a role that is ultimately allows me to do that. So be a little bit nosy about why we've built certain products, what benefit it really brings to somebody, and then ultimately bringing that to life through our marketing. So really kind of having empathy with consumers, tapping into kind of the more of emotional side, but yeah, marketing background across the years, but different automotive brands, and kind of feeling like the majority of the nation, who probably a lot of us don't really care about the techs and specs of our cars, but we understand what benefit it gives us in our life. So yeah, that's how I ended up here.
Excellent. And Scott, I guess the same question to you, because I know you've had a different kind of start to your career before moving into product management. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Welcome, everybody. But for me, it's a bit different. I mean, we've all ended up in products slightly, I guess, organic or different routes from what we've took. My background's predominantly finance, so 15 to 20 years in different finance functions across different businesses. I come into Auto Trader from one of our car supermarkets, working as a finance and business manager for them. And I guess understanding the challenges that both retailers and consumers face in the transaction of a vehicle as such, and where I've ended up. And I think I was always inquisitive in consumer behaviour, and especially understanding what things we might well do that change the journey, what impact it might have. And after kind of having 6 or 7 years at Auto Trader in different finance functions, I found myself kind of just leaning quite heavily with other product leads and being a bit more, understanding it from a different angle, but definitely from a data and a kind of analytical side. And then it was one of them really that opportunity arisen. I was kind of really interested, and here I am a number of years later in the product world.
I love that. I like how there's the kind of a common denominator there with curiosity, and there's it's pretty much like a new industry product. It's always evolving. People. Yeah,
that's it.
And you nosy people. Excellent. So, product marketing. Let's break this down. What is it?
Product marketing is probably what it says on the tin. So taking your product and bringing it to market. It's ultimately holding a bit of a mirror up against the features you might have built, the product you've built, and having a true reflection to be like, does a consumer actually care? Or have we just built this thing because we think it's a great feature or it's going to improve what we're doing? So product marketing really allows, I guess, you to work with the product team to build that together. So strategically think about it, really challenge ourselves, and then ultimately take it to market. So work with our marketing team, which is, I guess, where I sit, and bring it to life across different channels, how we reach them, be a bit creative with it. So add that kind of flavour into it and try and make sure that from anything a consumer might see, all the way from television all the way through to the end of their product experience has like the same tone of voice, look and feel, brings to life the same kind of like product proposition. So ultimately, in summary, it's just marketing the product and really dialing in and spending a lot of hours thinking as a consumer, doing market research, using it to validate and ultimately help collectively build a better product is the hope.
Brilliant. Now, you mentioned there that actually you don't sit in the product team.
Yes.
You sit in the marketing team. And I guess there's a lot of, in your role, having to collaborate with product managers, with designers, with the wider product space.
Yeah.
How does that work? How do you create any kind of networks between where you sit organisationally in marketing and where we sit in product? How does that work? How do you navigate that?
I spend about 90% of my time not with marketing. So I guess it's a lot about building relationships, building networks, and probably was one of the harder parts when I started, to not be directly in the team and also not to have a bit of a somebody's done it before. So I think product marketing in this capacity is relatively new to Auto Trader. So a new role, a new way of working. A lot of it is building relationships, figuring out how we could all work together, getting it wrong, and then finding out ways that we can get it right, realising that every different task we have, we might approach it differently, which I think is ultimately a lot of the way that Auto Trader approach it. So a lot of building relationships, kind of getting known across the business that this exists, how we do it. And then I know we'll come on to, but a little bit more about like some examples. It's sometimes quite hard to start and have a role, work with people, but if you don't have anything tangible of this is what we've delivered, sometimes it's hard for people to grasp what the change is about, how we're doing it, and how you can add value to what they're already doing. So I've got to know a lot of people, and it's brilliant because it brings together so many of like expertise to ultimately put all of our heads together to come with a great outcome. So a lot of building relationships and getting to know people has been a lot of it.
Yeah, and I guess, Scott, this is where you come in, because actually one of your first projects here at Auto Trader, or first kind of areas that you were interacting and collaborating with, was Scott's area.
Yeah.
I guess the people that might be listening at home, before we kind of get into things, it'd be good just to kind of get a bit of an overview of what this product area is. So, Scott, you work in the Part X area.
Yep.
Be good to get a bit of an overview of what that is, and actually, Amanda, how you kind of came to be in that area, like what the opportunity was.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I sit within a selling function, I guess, at Auto Trader, so I think it's probably worth resetting as well, and for people that might well be listening, that at Auto Trader, we're a place that has multiple ways for consumers to kind of dispose of their vehicle. So there's alternative methods. Whilst we might have other people in the marketplace that might as well one way of getting rid of a vehicle or selling your vehicle, or that you alluded to part exchange, there's private selling, there's other methods as well. We have to balance the fact that we've got multiple different routes for consumers. And Amanda alluded to earlier that she might not be into cars, and whilst I am, and I might well look at it, this is where we've worked brilliant with each other. I wouldn't want to be brainwashed in an experience myself, where I wouldn't want to just build a journey because of how in-depth I understand what a vehicle is, because I'm fully understand that there's a lot of consumers and people out there that might not understand the ins and outs of a vehicle and what additional features mean and what effectively value it could have on their vehicle. So I think it's not just specifically part exchange. I think where we kind of started to work with each other was more from an understanding from a consumer point of view and a valuation point of view of how much is my car worth, or what does it mean to a consumer. There isn't one organic route in, and fundamentally Amanda's been brilliant in there in helping us understand with consumers what's right for them, and we're the one that gives them the choices, and they should be choosing exactly what option they believe is right for them to dispose of their vehicle. And whatever kind of product they go into, they get the experience that suits their needs as well. I mean, what does help, and it might well have come on to, is, I mean, me and Amanda, I think I met you on the first week. It was just in the office in Manchester. So when you talk about relationships, and I'm not speaking for both of us, but I'd probably say we're really people person. So in the sense of we got on really well easily. And it was one of them conversations of, oh, where are you from? And it very quickly narrowed down to finding out that we lived about a few hundred metres away from each other, which kind of helped anyway. Not that was a thing, but we had a relationship that kind of helped us before we understood what impact we could probably help on each other in our roles. And I think 2 or 3 weeks in, we had a road trip over to one of our partners that we work with. And whilst I might be into cars, and I know Amanda said this, I was in the process myself of looking to change my vehicle. And it was still relatively new, but it had no air conditioning, probably the hottest day in 2022. Had traffic in there. It was a long day. And I think even that experience and journey, we learned a lot about each other, but a lot about the roles and what we could offer. Because, again, to me, product marketing was new at that point as well. So I probably had a lot of a head start on some other people if they're listening to this thinking, what is it? But I think we broke a lot of them barriers down, and I look forward to the relationship we've got and other things that are coming in this area as well.
It's like getting to know the person before the role and what you have to do. I think that definitely helps. When I first kind of joined Auto Trader, I think because it's such a huge company, one of the first things I did was like, right, I want to get to know everybody. Like, the work can come at a certain stage, but actually just creating a network and a connection with people that you know, everybody wants to do the same thing in work. Everyone wants to achieve really good outcomes for customers, for the people that we interact with on a daily basis. And I think, you've hit the nail on the head there, that it comes down to that connection that you create with somebody, like understanding someone before you get into the nitty-gritty. I guess, like, obviously it's quite a big product area, this. Amanda, how did you get stuck in?
Thrown in quite quickly. No,
Sink or swim, was it?
I think it might have been. No, it was. I was welcomed with open arms, and I think the business was really open to understand what could we do. We think we could do a little bit more to help consumers really understand the multitude of propositions that we have and how do we bring that to life for consumers. So it was kind of working with the team, the product leads within that area, and kind of taking a step back and working with them to say, we have all of these different things. How do they benefit a consumer? How could we ultimately give a consumer a bit more confidence to go through this journey, but also feel like we're helping them navigate the right choice for them? So a lot of what we've been doing is kind of looking at language, journey, mapping things out, understanding collectively together where we think the biggest opportunities are. And we've done a really good job to align. So a lot of it is, it's not just like me running away and squirreling in a room and saying, this is what we've got. It's very much joining every meeting, understanding ways of working, seeing the end-to-end consumer process, and also then looking at our on-site experience, but also what do we do from an off-site experience? So how do we communicate to consumers? Like, does the language make sense? Are we using the same words? Are we using different words? So there's a lot of stuff around like positioning, any branding we have in there, and just kind of a true reflection of what we do. But a lot of it was kind of open arms into the selling world and then figuring out, how have we made this work? So I think on reflection, it's a huge part of the business, and a lot of it we've kind of taken for granted. I guess how well it has worked, we'd probably say. But I think on reflection, it's a lot of like, everyone's been invited to everything, and I guess where you add value. My mum always said to me, like, it's like a party, it's a family party, everyone wants an invite. So that's the approach that we took. Is it wasn't like, oh, product marketing, you can't, or you can add value here. It was an open door, and then it was kind of a decision of like, oh, do we think we need to keep kind of which people need to be in each different step. So it was a bit like inviting everyone to the party and then figuring out which best kind of main courses or desserts we were all bringing. It worked really well. I love that
analogy, and I think that's such a good way of looking at things, because there's so many people involved in the creation of new features or optimization. And there is always that internal struggle, Scott, I guess, as a product lead, who do I include? How do I manage that kind of network? And I love that approach where it's like, look, we're all adults, we're all professionals here. You just make that decision on whether you can provide input and work it out from there. So that's
Definitely
great. This sounds like a really great experience. And I guess have there been any pitfalls? Have there been any learnings from collaborating? Obviously, this is the first time, like the first kind of product at Auto Trader you delved into. Yeah. So I guess, Scott and Amanda, have there been any learnings from this collaboration? Is there anything that you can share openly?
I mean, I'll jump in first, Amanda. I feel like I already have, so sorry. I mean, I don't want to say it's been seamless. It probably has from mine and Amanda's point of view, mainly because of and we're a bit clear and understanding. And I think you hit a bit of nail on the head and talked about jargon and language, and like coming from a finance background and ethically there's a kind of a language that people use, and then I might have accidentally dropped a few of them words into the product community, and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. But then people from an ex-tech or development or design point of view have their own way of language as well. I guess it might come down to the person, and I don't want to kind of chuck this straight onto Amanda and see if she's had some different challenges as well, but I'm quite an open person, and we were honest from the off of saying, look, it's quite a safe space. We're not here. I've always had a bit of a motto, like, work's the majority of our working week for the majority of us, and it should be a happy environment, inclusive one where you can openly say what you want, and we're there to challenge each other, and I'm sure nobody is there to be a burden. And like feels like you're coming in and you really dagger to the heart of the product and saying things you shouldn't be. So I've not experienced any of them yet, and hopefully I don't. But again, to Amanda's point, if we do, I think we've got a relationship enough where we know what each other's saying. It's just to respect what each other's saying. But I feel like I'm going to chuck that over to you, Amanda.
Go for it.
Have you had any other experiences?
I think in terms of like this project that we're speaking about, it's worked really well. But I think the big thing to acknowledge is change is a big thing, and everybody addresses it in different ways. So I think having this kind of like case study of ways of working has been brilliant and a great one to fall back on. And I think a lot of it comes down to like Auto Trader ways of working, building relationships, understanding that something's a bit new, and how you tackle that together. So I wouldn't say it's always seamless, because a new role into I would probably say a really well-oiled Auto Trader machine does always like challenge our thinking, and I think it's been a great journey to go on and have like different pockets where we've like learnt different experiences. And I think on reflection, what we're trying to do now is say, we've had loads of different experiences. Can we make it so that each one isn't kind of a new roller coaster to jump on? Is there something like a little bit we can not like make a process, because that's not very Auto Trader, but how do we make everyone feel a little bit more comfortable with the change? And so I would say we've approached it in a really good way. We've learnt a lot. We've all learnt a lot about ourselves, and I think we've learned to understand what value we think having the role or area of product marketing and what the future might look like for product marketing at Auto Trader. So it's been a busy year, lots of learning, but no, I think this has been brilliant to work through.
Much well put than me there, Amanda.
Thanks.
I think, is there anything that you can take from working with Scott that you definitely think you can take to the wider business? Because obviously this isn't going to be the only product you work on.
No.
The product team is quite big at Auto Trader. Has this given you food for thought, where it's helped you to understand, right, the next thing that I'm working on, this is how I might connect with this product area, as that kind of giving you a bit of scope?
So it was a bit like an open door and a bit of a playground for us to test and learn what we could do. So I guess for anyone listening, there's no rule book, there's no playbook of we've introduced this is how you should do 101. So I guess thanks to Scott and the selling area for being so open, for allowing us to test different routes and also challenge their own thinking. What I would say is like the kind of things that we've taken away are different tools and techniques that we think we could apply to let everyone, like, product marketing isn't just something that I do, it's something that everybody can do. Some people feel more comfortable than others, and I think that's where I can like help and support and lean into that to bring it to life a little bit. But we've learned kind of different tools, and I think the key thing of all of this, and it's very Auto Trader, is like putting a bunch of people together, understanding, getting to know each other, building some rapport is like essential to any part of projects where you have multiple expertise coming together to try and ultimately get to an end goal. And you're not always going to agree, and I think you have to be comfortable that you're not going to like it's not just your project, it's everybody coming together. So I think getting comfortable, not all agreeing, but knowing that the end output is something that is like really good for a consumer and hopefully should like motivate them, engage them, and ultimately make the product perform a little bit better. One other thing I would definitely add, and Scott alluded to it earlier, is it's quite hard because we have so many products and propositions that a consumer coming to Auto Trader has so many different things to do. So you could say it's a blessing, but it also comes with challenges. So one learning I've definitely taken now, like working across multiple different product areas, is bringing other product owners closer to what's happening in other areas so they can understand the whole like overarching proposition of why Auto Trader. So we're not creating one proposition over here and another one over there and they all look like they've come from different companies. So I think that bringing everyone together is driven by making consumers a bit more confident. So if hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. You know what, it just made me think of that really good workshop that we had. I think it was a couple of months ago, and it was the consumer proposition workshop. And I think the majority of the product team were in there. I think we're in a room similar to this, like, you know, you could write on the walls, and everyone had just laid out, okay, this is what this company's customer proposition is. This is what this company's doing, and it really helped to just understand those examples and then absolutely just dump out our thoughts of what we all thought. And I think that really helped because, and it's like you mentioned in the workshop, being a part of that and helping to define it enables us as product leads when we go away from, you know, the workshop to think about, okay, well, in my area, if I know that this is the overarching thing that we're thinking about in the business, that's something that I know will enable me to make the right decisions on the futures. And Scott, I don't know if that kind of helped you, like just understanding that a bit more about what the business is thinking and other people's thoughts, especially from a marketing point of view.
Yeah, for sure. I think like you were saying as well, it's whilst we kind of crossed paths very early on, just anecdotally in an office originally, I think it was a particular meeting, but I think involving everyone from the off is imperative in the sense of they will add their own value as well of whether they need to be there or not. And I think having Amanda on the journey from kind of the off from day one definitely helped us. And it, I mentioned before about the jargon and the language, and no one would probably, I'm sure, want to read mine, especially through a product, and that's where I'm looking at different people in the sense of their expertise of what this means for a particular consumer. So I think I can definitely echo that point. And I think it's, I mean, I don't know how long you've been here now, Amanda?
Just over a year. It's flown by.
Time flies, doesn't it?
It does fly by.
Yeah.
I know. But yeah, I think bringing, and probably what you said earlier is like product marketing as a role could sit anywhere. It could sit in product, it could sit in marketing, it could sit on its own. And I think we've kind of unpacked that, and I think are questioning like how do we do it? Are we doing it the right way? Could we do it different ways? And I think that's the thing, is there's no rule book of this is how it must be done. So what we've tried to do is bring product thinking and marketing thinking a lot closer together. So earlier you asked about what have we done, and it's like building relationships. It's not just relationships with me, it's relationships with the whole of marketing. So where can we bring different parts of marketing in earlier in the journey? Because the earlier you can bring people in is a bit like a party. The earlier they're invited to the party and understand what's going on, they feel really part of it, and I guess like motivated to move forward with it. So it's definitely, I guess I sound like a proper party, like all these analogies, but I just think the sooner you can bring people on board, they feel involved, they feel invested, and we ultimately all want to drive the same aim. So a lot of relationships, I think over the definitely past year, we've brought marketing and product a lot closer together, and also with the design community too. So it's kind of
definitely
everyone.
I think the more I work with product marketing, and I have in previous roles, the more I've realised actually it's okay as a product manager that I don't need to do everything and kind of be like a Swiss Army knife of a person. It's okay to, you know, have somebody come in to support me where I think I need it. And I think that definitely helps me understand roles a little bit more and how I can get the best out of collaboration. So I think, I think it's not about doing everything. Like, we are not superheroes.
No.
And there's already so much that we do as product managers that it does help just having somebody to collaborate with.
Yeah.
Who can just help you have that like kind of final piece or another addition to what you're trying to shape as a feature.
100%. And I think for those of us in the room, we might well have seen it, but we've got obviously our type of matrix at Auto Trader from a product point of view of our own strengths and weaknesses. And I don't just want to speak from a product point of view. It'll be the same in product marketing. And would be probably a bit of an alien if I'm saying someone is strong in every area at like 90% and like I know my key strengths are data and analytical and having an ex-finance background. We've got product leads that are ex-developers, ex-design, and we've all come from slightly different routes, and I think that's where some people are different. I know Auto Trader hasn't got any of this in there, where some people own a product and they think, this is my product. This is like, no one is allowed in, no one is allowed an opinion, or if you offer an opinion that doesn't agree with me,
you're out.
I'm going to shoot it down and you're out the room.
Like little mini CEO.
And people treat that, which is great, and I love the sense of that, but I kind of welcome everyone's opinion, more so for the fact that I know myself, I've got my own strengths, but I have my own weaknesses that I want to develop on and improve, and people like Amanda, not just the sales but developers and designer, help me enhance that and grow myself over time, and I'm pretty sure we'll never get there where we're 100% in kind of every category and understand it from there. So I think that's important to say as well. So
definitely. Now I want to touch on something that I think is quite a hot topic at the minute in the product industry, and that is Airbnb's recent decision to restructure the product team. And I think when I first saw the news, all I saw was like the clickbait headline of they're getting rid of the product team or Airbnb, and then you read into it and actually it's not the case. It's quite an interesting thing that they're doing, where they are creating a hybrid role, I guess. So instead of being a product manager, you actually are a hybrid of a product marketing manager and a product manager. And I thought, while it's hot on everyone's minds, it'd be really interesting to just get your opinions of what do you think of that?
I think it's really interesting to read, and I think it's definitely a lot of what we've been doing this year of trying to look at how other companies have worked and used product marketing and also product leads together. Bit disruptive when you read it and you're like, hang on a second, do people now think that I'm going to try and take everyone's product job? I'm most definitely not, don't worry. But I think there's a lot that we can learn from it. So I think something that really resonated is there was kind of twofold. So I guess the first one, more about product leads and product marketing, was very much saying, and this is not me saying this is what we do, but from a product perspective, they were saying the marketing lens allows you to really understand and connect why that feature or the whole product itself resonates with your consumer. And that's where we blend all of our brains together and do a bit of a 2-in-a-box role with any product lead to look at it and really challenge ourselves to bring it to market. I think because we have so many products and propositions here, if we took that role and adapted it here, I think we might kind of struggle. And I think Auto Trader and our way of working, I think, definitely works perfectly for us, that we've got people, like you say, our product leads do so much. If you all of a sudden had to then bring it to market and come up with our messaging hierarchy and how we're going to advertise it and all of those lenses, I think people might be a bit stuck. So I think it's really kind of nice to see. I think really challenged our thinking and also gave us something to reflect, to be like, are we doing it the best way that we could do? Is there any learnings we could take? And the second part I found really fascinating was around the design thinking. So I guess a lot of it, and for those listening who haven't listened to it, a lot of it was around design being involved really early, and I guess design being in leadership positions. And I think it's really fascinating, and it was a lot around design thinking being consumer first and really challenging, and not necessarily just like designing what your product lead told you to. It's more of like giving them the time to think. But I think the nice reflection about that is Auto Trader, and we've probably alluded to it, is designer invited to the party as soon as the problems discussed. It's a big party. Everyone's coming. So I think it kind of was a nice thing to see that that's their thinking, but we have design so integrated and involved from the offset that it's probably quite a similar. We have like a similarity in that sense.
Cool. I mean, you just mentioned there, you read the clickbait and you think, oh, wow.
Yeah, I was freaking out. I saw it on Twitter as well, of all places, and you just see that one status and you're like, oh, God.
Yeah, it's the same with other stuff, and you've read about different tech businesses and the way that they've gone. And I think you need to look at it, I guess, at where you are. And you've, again, just mentioned, Amanda, we don't just have, we've just kind of talked a bit about selling here and consumers disposing of a car and what a valuation. That is like one little bit of Auto Trader. It takes people a long time to understand. We're forgetting that there's the retailer side of that. There's the retailers and the consumer. There's a transaction. There's people purchasing their new car, the emotional attachments. There's even more on top of that, how you fund it, how you find. There is so many different things. And I think if you brought them roles together, I mean, it'd be interesting to see what goes on at Airbnb, but if you bring them roles together here and ask someone to understand everything, I mean, I don't think there's enough hours in a day, but if I prove them wrong, then this is recorded, so there we go.
Could live in the office.
I quite like the element of product managers having empathy, because when I read that, I was like, well, I have empathy. I'm very empathetic, but actually, it's like having that kind of, that nerve to, really, really add that, like you said, the emotion to things. Sometimes if you're working on a feature, it's like, okay, well, I want to achieve this metric. I want to go after this. I know that as a product manager, it's how I communicate the value to the business, and that's all I'm focused on. But I think the way they were describing the empathy part is, okay, well, there is a feature, but it's how you communicate that feature. And I think it's getting their product team to actually think about the bigger picture of things. And I thought that was so interesting. And I think even if I'm not in a role where I'm like a product marketing manager and a product manager, there's nothing to stop me to start to think more in a product marketing way and just taking little bits of that. So that's something that I took from that announcement, is like, how can I be a little bit more product marketing-y thinking? I don't even know if that's a word, product marketing, in it.
You
rolls off
created
the tongue
it.
just there.
No, I definitely agree. And I think that can sometimes come across as like some people read it and like you'll say, I've got empathy. I've definitely got empathy. And it's not saying that you don't have any and I have loads. That's not what we're saying. I think it's the balance of really questioning and kind of taking that reflection to be like, how does it benefit a consumer? And kind of as if you knew, as product leads, you know your products inside and out. And I kind of might know a bit about your products. I might know a lot, but I kind of come along and ask all those questions. Why does this benefit me? Because as humans, we're emotional characters. So everything we do, there's the rational and the emotional side of what we do. And you might make logical decisions, but in there you have biases, you have things you trust, you have things you care about. And I think the more that we can show that we have that empathy, and we haven't actually mentioned it, but a car is your first or second biggest asset that you own. It is an emotional thing. So I think because we do this, we're here every day, sometimes we forget. And it's that reflection to say, this car might allow somebody to take their kids to swimming, or might allow them to go on family trips. And it's the lifestyle side that allows them to have it. So it's kind of flipping that to look at the product and be like, okay, if they're disposing of their car, what does that mean, and how can we connect to them so we don't feel we've just got a bit of a heart. And it's not saying we don't have one today, we definitely do. We're just trying to dial it up a little bit more to really connect with consumers.
And they're definitely the questions that we need, and I love more than anything, and I welcome any from that standpoint of view. I mean, for those that definitely work here, I still get my mum saying when she wants to change a car, oh, can you get me a car? As if I've got 400,000 cars in the office. At Auto Trader, they still talk
let me
about
check the warehouse.
They still talk about, but because I guess I've always been interested in cars before ever kind of coming to Auto Trader, and from being a young boy, I just I can be quite siloed in the sense of if I looked at it from my perspective as a product, but we need to understand what different consumers want to find out or understand
Yeah.
or ask them questions. And I've always said no question is a silly question. You said, Amanda, of like, whoa, what does this mean, or what's that feature do? But you definitely need to understand that, otherwise you'll build it for the wrong type of kind of pool of people that are trying to use it. But it is first or second biggest asset, as you've mentioned. It's emotional. A lot of people name their cars. It's not just getting rid of a piece of metal. For some people, it's getting rid of, I mean,
it's not disposing. It's,
it's
this
not.
car that I've like cared for the past 10 years. Really sad to see it go, but I need a new car. Like, instead of dispose, it's,
I'm not going to ask
else.
Ivy on here if you have a name for your car, but we'll...
I don't.
Oh, no.
I'm not that person.
I do.
Oh. Are we allowed to share or not?
I don't have a name.
So I have a really old Citroen C3 that my mum owned, and then last year she gave it to me, and it's a 16-year-old Citroen C3. I don't know how it's still going, how it's still alive, but it's a very loved car, because it's grey, and like she's an old gal. We were like, what's the oldest like old lady name we can think of? And we think Ethel.
I think that's beautiful.
Oh, it's such a lovely name as well, and it's like such a lovable kind of name.
So when you eventually the day comes where Ethel might leave the family, like, it's an emotional attachment for you, and it's exactly this.
Like, I grew up in that car as well. Like, my mum used to drive me around in it.
Like, its spec, its features, it's the car, it's ready to change. I might not have the attachment at that granular level, and we definitely have to understand that. And that's where, like, from the product marketing point of view, I think it's understanding that for a user. But again, we've only just briefly talked about a selling point of view. There's so many ways, I think, in auto trade it can benefit from, and I'm sure Amanda will get around everyone.
I don't want to sound heartless. My current car doesn't have a name, but it's because I lease it, so I kind of don't feel like I own her.
You're gonna have to let her go eventually.
I know there's our relationship is 3 years long, and then she's gone. But before that, when I moved to Manchester, I thought, I don't need a car. No, I didn't. Me and public transport didn't work out, so swiftly got a car, and my granddad bought it for me, and he spoke about it as our car. So she didn't get a name, but now every Mini I see, I look at and I think of me and my granddad. So I'm not heartless. I just don't name it.
Did you have to ask Granddad's permission when you got rid of that car?
I felt really bad. I didn't ask for permission.
Flip it in
I kind of like let him know that, like, the Mini was lovely, but she was an old gal when I got her, and she kind of needed a new home. So there is that kind of, I didn't want to sound heartless, like, oh, product marketing, don't name my car. It's just, I think because when I worked at brands earlier in my career, used to get a new car every year, which was a very spoilt start of my learning to drive career. So I've never had the emotional attachment of my car. Maybe one day, but not just there.
But again, you're another type of consumer.
Exactly. So. I was going to say before, and I think it comes to it, is like, as a brand, we're a brand that serves like the whole nation. So having so many different people's opinions, and also really going out to consumers and really understanding what they think, and taking that step back, and that lens really allows us to understand we're not going to be able to please absolutely everybody, but what can we do to simplify language? What can we do to like make the experience like accessible for everybody, but also kind of exciting? So there's a lot to do.
And then definitely, we touched on it before, just tie that up, depending how they choose to go away, but what the impact that has on the retailer side of things, and make of it as a transaction that's easy between both. So
absolutely. And obviously there's a lot involved in this.
So much.
I guess, there are going to be people listening who either, there's been a big change in what they do in product, where they are going to have to start working more with people in product marketing, or they might be in a situation where they want to understand how they can work better with product marketing. And I guess just to kind of end on this episode, what advice would you give to that listener? So somebody who's listening in right now from a product marketing perspective, but also as a product manager, like what is the best advice, that golden kind of thing that you can give to them?
Very, very good question. I would say from an advice perspective is, I guess on reflection, like product marketing, we have one person here. Don't be afraid to ask the silly questions. Build relationships, be curious, and I guess use as much consumer research as you can to kind of validate your points, in the sense of like try to take that step back and that lens. But I think a lot of it is there isn't a manual and rule book and you can go and look at stuff. I find it really interesting. I find, maybe because I'm slightly nosy and love to know what's going on, so I think it's great to bounce from like different product leads to understand what's happening. So I think from like an auto trader perspective, it's like a fantastic role. So if anyone is like thinking of getting into it, there's never a dull day. Every day, every hour might be slightly different. But I think it's kind of having curiosity, kind of being kind of the consumer champion, but remembering that we do have a dual-sided marketplace, so there's a lot to also consider. So I think have a bit of wider context and just get to know everybody, how the business works and how you can add value, because every product lead is probably different. Every human is different. So how me and Scott work together and how me and you work together will be very different depending on where you're at. So I think just open the door, have the conversation, and then try to see where you can both fit in to add value to each other.
100%. I think from a product lead perspective, I think majority of us are people anyway, and I think you've kind of got to just be open and transparent. I think anyone I come across and I speak to, I kind of just have the open conversation of ways of working. How would you want to be approached? I'm quite open and honest and say you can be direct with me and things like that. Some people are not, which is fine. But I think as well, I kind of mentioned earlier, it's not just like your product, it's everybody's. And I think if you've got a product lead that is like, it's mine, changing that mentality is going to be hard anyway. But I think having the open door and listening to everyone's opinion, if we've had a difficult conversation, there's never any awkwardness or anything from it. We just understand each other's view and then decide which way we might go forward. If we had great ideas and we were unsure, well, we might test both different methods, see what works best for the consumer. And I think there's no I in it. It's definitely as a team. And that doesn't just go from dealing with product marketing. From my point of view, that's anybody across the business at whatever level. And I think understanding your consumers and the people that you work with is imperative, and making sure that there's always an open door and someone feels comfortable that they can say absolutely anything, however small or silly or stupid they think the question might be, because there never is one at the end of the day.
Excellent, brilliant advice. Well, thank you for joining me on the sofa today.
Thanks for having us.
It's been a really good conversation, and hopefully it's been useful to anyone listening at home. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and click the notification bar at the top to make sure you've got those notifications on. Also, do not forget that this is on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, so make sure that you give us a follow, definitely leave us feedback and give us a rating, and we will see you next week.